This is the story of a night that no one in Blackwood Village will ever forget. The night of the blood moon ritual. And I am going to tell you exactly what happened. It was a small, quiet village surrounded by thick forests that no one dared to enter after dark. People whispered about strange things that happened deep in those woods, but most just ignored the stories, thinking they were old tales meant to scare children. Until that night. The blood moon appeared once every 20 years, turning the sky a deep, eerie red. Some said it was just a natural event, but the older folks in the village knew better. They spoke in hushed voices about the ritual, warning people to stay inside, lock their doors, and never look out their windows. But 5 friends, Daniel, Sarah, Mark, Olivia, and James, didn't believe in those old legends. They were young, full of energy, and eager to prove everyone wrong. So, when the blood moon rose, they decided to go into the woods and see for themselves if there was any truth to the stories. They took a lantern and some flashlights, laughing as they walked through the dark trees. "It's just a moon," Mark said, kicking a rock down the path. "Nothing magical about it." Sarah shivered. "Still, it feels different tonight." James rolled his eyes. "That's because you're letting those old stories get to you." But as they moved deeper into the woods, the air grew colder, and an unnatural silence surrounded them. Not even the crickets chirped. Olivia, who had always been the bravest, suddenly stopped. "Do you hear that?" A low, distant chanting echoed through the trees. Daniel swallowed. "It's probably just the wind." But they all knew it wasn't. The voices were rhythmic, almost hypnotic, as if a group of people were repeating the same words over and over. Slowly, they followed the sound until they reached a small clearing. There, in the middle of the clearing, stood a circle of hooded figures, their faces hidden in the shadows. They stood around an ancient stone altar covered in strange symbols. On the altar lay an old book, its pages glowing under the red moonlight. The chanting grew louder. The friends crouched behind a fallen tree, their hearts pounding. "We should leave," Olivia whispered. But before they could move, Mark's foot snapped a branch. The chanting stopped. Every hooded figure turned toward them at once. For a moment, there was only silence. Then, one of the figures raised an arm and pointed directly at them. "Run." They didn't need to say it aloud. All 5 of them turned and ran as fast as they could, crashing through the trees. The sound of footsteps followed them, fast, heavy, and getting closer. Sarah tripped, letting out a scream. Daniel grabbed her, pulling her to her feet just in time. They kept running until they burst out of the woods, their lungs burning. When they finally reached the village, they slammed the door of Daniel's house shut and locked it. Hearts racing, they peered out the window, expecting to see the hooded figures. But there was nothing, only the red glow of the blood moon above. They barely slept that night, and by morning, they convinced themselves it had been some kind of strange nightmare, maybe a secret cult or a group of weird villagers playing a game, until they saw the news. The headline read, 5 people missing after the blood moon night. The pictures below the headline showed 5 faces, but they weren't strangers. They were Daniel, Sarah, Mark, Olivia, and James. Their own faces stared back at them from the paper. Sarah screamed, "This has to be a mistake." But as she spoke, a knock came from the front door. Slow, heavy, rhythmic. James stepped back. "Don't open it." The knocking continued, and then a voice whispered through the cracks of the door, "The ritual is not complete." That was the last thing they heard before the door creaked open on its and then the world went dark.